One of the questions we're often asked, or we're being asked increasingly by dairy farmers, is their herd suitable for selective dry cow therapy? That's drying off without the use of antibiotics, typically with a teat sealant instead. So if we look at the data that we have available for it, well, the first thing we need to know is that records and information are absolutely critical if you're going to consider the dry cow therapy route without the use of antibiotics. And we know, for example, that herds that are suitable for selective dry cow therapy are those that are milk recording. If you're not milk recording, basically your herd is not a suitable herd for considering selective dry cow therapy. So really with those farms, we'd urge you to start milk recording. As a matter of fact, you'd nearly start milk recording now to establish how successful you are at controlling mastitis over the dry period. And it'll set you up then for next year's milk recording to establish which cows you might consider the selective dry cow therapy route on. But for herds that are milk recording, some of these, not all of them, but some of them will be suitable for selective dry cow therapy. So the first thing you need is a recent milk recording, ideally a recording within 4 weeks of drying off. And I'd say it's not ideal, it's actually essential. And the reason we want a milk recording within 4 weeks of drying off is because we want to establish the likelihood or chance of a cow having acquired a new infection shortly before she was dried off. So for most spring calving herds, this actually requires 2 milk recordings, one in October to catch the cows drying off by say mid-November, and the second in early to mid-November to catch the remaining cows that will be dried off before Christmas. So the first point there is a recent milk recording. The second point there is that we ideally need records looking back over the last dry period to establish what the number of cows or percentage of cows that became infected during the previous dry period was. And this needs to be less than 10%. So you need to have a low new infection rate over the dry period in the previous lactation. The third point then has to do with the type of bacteria that are present. And to establish this, we need to do some culture and sensitivity tests on cows within the herd. Ideally, cows that are subclinically infected would be established. So cows have had a case of mastitis during the year. If you didn't then store a sample from them, do it now. Sample those cows and have their culture and sensitivity test. The culture test will establish what bacteria is present. The sensitivity will establish what antibiotic they're sensitive to. And if Strep agalactiae is detected, the traditional cure for that is, because it's so virulent within the herd, or so easily passed from cow to cow, that we recommend that all cows receive an antibiotic if Strep agalactiae is detected in any samples. The fourth point then is to milk record early next year. So typically in spring calving herds, they'll be calving from late January onwards, and would recommend for those herds that the first milk recording is carried out by around St. Patrick's Day to capture those first cows. Why we need to do that is because we know that by sampling cows within around 60 days of the start of lactation, if they have an infection, that infection is either an infection from a previous year or an infection that was acquired over a dry period. And by milk recording in the first 60 days, we can determine how effective your last dry period was and how effective the treatment that you used on the cows at dry off were as well. The fourth criteria established, this is really coming from the AHI, from their technical working group, is the criteria for suitability for selective dry cow therapy. And their data would suggest that cows with an average cell count of less than 100,000 across the whole year, from a minimum of 4 milk recordings, with no individual counts of over 200,000 cells per mil, are cows that are suitable. Now, to be honest, and I suggest that people would be much more stringent in their thresholds in the first year that they consider selective dry cow therapy. So I might go as low as 50,000 for the cow and 100,000 cells in any individual test, and a minimum of 4 tests again. And look, you don't need to go it on your own if you're considering the selective dry cow therapy route. For suitable farms, there's a Teagasc Dry Cow Consultation available to you that you can obtain free of charge and use to support your decision to selectively dry cow. This will involve a vet coming out meeting with you, and just, maybe it'll be online now with all the COVID that's going on, and deciding on the best route for your farms and the most suitable cows for considering selective dry cow therapy on, assuming you're suitable for doing so. So in summary, if you're considering the selective dry cow therapy route, you must be milk recording. If you're not, your herd is not suitable. And if you are milk recording and have good data and a high standard of hygiene and a low cell count, well then there are individual farms for whom the selective dry cow therapy route is available. And don't do it without looking for a Teagasc dry cow consultation to help you make the correct decision for your farm.